right now we do have a panelist, we do have a panel rather, and we are getting ready to get those people on board. Just give us a few seconds to get that organized, please. Thank you. Can I request? Yes. Hi, Dixon. Back again. Good to see you.
Hi. Hello. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Tahseen, welcome from sunny Saudi Arabia and Eid Mubarak.
Thank you. Wish you all the same.
Thank you very much. Ranjit, welcome on board.
Good morning.
Hi. Ravi, thanks for being here. Let me try and get Ravi Hemnani. His muted and his video is off. But there you go. Dr. Swati Sarangi. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing
everyone.
Excellent. Hi, Ravi. How are you?
Good. Thank you. How are you?
Excellent. Excellent. I think we can now move on. I'll request the moderator to take it over from me, please.
So, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ranjit Kompi. We'll be together for next about 1 hour or so. We have an esteemed global panel with us today. We'll start with from east to west. We have Dixon Tang. Of course, you heard him before. He's joining us from Singapore, and he is, of course, he's a global educator and a keynote speaker. So we already heard him. So we'll know more about him from a learning perspective. From Hyderabad, we have Dr. Swati Sarangi. She is the global L&OD head for Dr. Reddy's. She brings an excellent mix of academics and professional world, and we'll get to know more about it from pharma and multiple sectors that she's worked in. We have Ravi Hemnani, who is joining us. He is the head L&D for Global Learning Center for Siemens, and he would bring in us about how leadership development and learning has changed and evolved over the pandemic. We also have Mr. Subramaniam, who is Assistant Director, HR and Business Support for GSH India. We'll get to know the flavor of service industry, the impact that it has, and how he is hooked up with it. And then we move west to Tahseen, who joins us from Saudi Arabia. He is head L&D for Petrorabig. So welcome all the panelists, and we'll spend about next 1 hour looking at how the future of learning works and what are the impact that it has, right? So if you look at last 1 year or so, in fact, when we look at the World Economic Forum report last year, right, they had estimated that 54% of all employees will have to be rescaled or upscaled in the next 3 years to just meet the organization requirement. Work from home. What are the network security issues that they need to take care of? How to set up a home office? Now we have to go back and start doing something that need to actually build up their capabilities. Now let's look at how it has impacted everyone around. So we'll go to Dr. Swati first. In fact, what are the people capability challenges for a pharma company like yours had to face, and how did you enable people to support them in this?
Well, if I had to put it, I think a lot was happening at the same time. So it was like trying to make our way and navigate in the fog of uncertainty, if I can call that, very loud and clear, saying that everything was uncertain. We didn't know how to go about it. But yet we kept going, and it was about working, and learning surely augured and helped us all through. So there were two segments, typically, if you look at what was happening at Dr. Reddy's, because we are a pharma company. So there were people who were going to work, and we call them the Corona warriors, because they were, in the plants, in our sites, and they were showing up every day at work. Then you also had the support teams such as IT, HR, legal, and others who did not go to work, but were working from home and very actively supporting the ones who were working, in the sites. work was happening. And for us at Dr. Reddy's, our motto is that good health can't wait. And truly, we were all committed, knowing that it was a responsibility of sort to keep working. I must say that when you talk about learning, why we focus so much on learning? Because we want people to do things in a better and more effective manner so that they can be relevant for the cause and in the context that they are in. That is the reason why we focus on learning. Now, if we want people to learn, we are actually focusing on people delivering, people adding greater value, dreaming, daring, all of that. But when we want to dial up all this, I think the foundation on things like caring and sharing. So we at Dr. Reddy's, we thought that as learning and development function, we had to first build that foundation of care. So we ran a campaign of care for self, care for others, and care for business. And we had a host of learning interventions planned around it. The second part, which I mentioned, we also focused a lot on sharing. For example, we ran a campaign about learning stories. So people could write how they reflected and how they learned when they were doing things differently in their own work or using technology seamlessly, or they were learning new skills, or even when they were working from home, how they were grappling with work and life. So they had to reflect and share. We also had our leaders going and sharing, making those connections. We had cross-functional teams who were communicating with each other and working so powerfully in a very empowered manner. So a lot of focus on caring and sharing really helped us. I would also say we took to the virtual means of learning very quickly. We were already on the journey. So what we did is physical classrooms made way for virtual ones. We also had this personalized learning experiences, which is your AI-enabled learning. That also we sort of really got that into the fray and wanted to capitalize on that. Learning journeys, we broke it into pieces because we realized that in the virtual space of learning, we can't have longish sessions. So bite and crisp sessions made way. We also ensured that, the engagement levels were high. So simulation, gamification, running competitions, trying to get everybody abuzz with learning. And trust me, what was so amazing was a huge learning appetite of our people, whether it was in sites or it was working from home. I also feel that learning sort of helped them to balance in the chaos that was happening around them. It made them also align with the purpose. So learning was a true balancer and sort of aligner in that sense. What we did and the learning and development side is we tried to be very innovative. We also focused on being impactful for the learner and the business alike. And that is what took us along the way.
Excellent. Thanks, Swati. Thanks for the detailed one out there. So let's also go back and look at how Tessin has handled it. Tessin, in fact, for your industry, it was a double whammy, not only the COVID, but the financial implications of the crude oil going down. How did your team manage it out there from the learning aspect?
I think in the current situation actually might actually be a blessing in disguise, and this is something that I mentioned in the intro for our panel as well. But don't get me wrong, as in I'm not celebrating the crisis we are in. But however, I believe the technology that was already available to all of us, to all organizations of all sizes, the entire crisis has actually enabled the organizations to adopt the technology much faster. This also helped us as in take our learning agendas forward. And of course, there have been budget cuts and there have been all the kind of things that you keep hearing on a day-to-day basis. But it has also given us time as learning professionals at Petrorabic to actually relook at ourselves and put our house in order. As I mentioned, then adoption of technology has been accelerated because of the entire crisis. And we as learning professionals had to reinvent the rule of our game. As we come out of the crisis and we look at how learning will be done in future, we realize that the normal classroom program that we used to do might have to be faded away. And there's another interesting story that I'd like to kind of share from something that happened earlier this year, right in the middle of COVID-19. We were actually planning at Petrorabic. So just to give you a brief background of what Petrorabic really is. Petrorabic is a refining and a petrochemical organization. It's a joint venture of Saudi Aramco and Sumitomo Chemicals of Japan. And we are a pretty large petrochemical player. And we have been planning for a planned shutdown, a turnaround for the plant for almost a year and a half before the entire crisis. And during the time of January, February is the time when we were actually trying to start our planned shutdown. And we were expecting people to come in from all over the world. So our original equipment manufacturers and their experts were supposed to be flying in from all over the world for this planned shutdown. But what happened was that because of the entire crisis, the flights were kind of stopped. We couldn't get these resources. And we needed to train on a very accelerated manner our internal trainers. Our technical teams actually took up the leadership in training their teams. So I would say I'd give a lot of credit to our business leaders who've actually taken on the responsibility of becoming the trainers, becoming people who have the focus of learning and making sure that the knowledge gets transferred to them, our employees. And we actually came out of the entire turnaround in a much faster manner. And we completed the entire thing on time and within budget. So that's been something exceptionally brilliant. And it has only happened because of the elements of learning and elements of training that have been put into place. There have been things that we have developed much before, which enabled us to kind of do this. We developed a program called Building Development Savvy Leaders that helped our employees to actually take the ownership of learning. So we were kind of trying to build we were trying to kind of reduce our reliance on external trainers, external technical trainers, and develop our own leaders to take up these leadership role in terms of training and teaching within the organization. So I think that the entire crisis helped us move in a much more accelerated manner, and that is something that is exceptional. And that's the reason why I keep repeating that this COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise for Petrorabic especially. And we as learning professionals should be taking the advantage of this to accelerate and move forward with our agendas.
Thanks, Yasin. In fact, that helps. Let's go to Dixon now. Dixon, in your global perspective, how have the organizations used learning levers globally? In fact, either in Singapore or other organizations that you've seen across, where they've been able to help talent cope up with this crisis?
Great question. Thanks, Ranjit. And I'm from Singapore, and what I noticed is there are a couple of things happening because of this COVID, and all these are actually shaping the different direction of the learning. So a couple of things. The first thing I'm seeing is learning as a necessity, right? And learning as a necessity. Before the COVID, a lot of time when I work with some organizations, when they say, oh yeah, when is your next workshop, when is your next learning event? Right? Some of them, they may think that, oh yeah, we have a very busy quarter, maybe we delay a little bit. Right? So they tend to give some excuses in terms of delaying. But with this COVID, learning, number one, become a necessity because people need to know how to operate a virtual team. Right? So they need to instantly learn, right? Within 24 hours, they need to learn, right, how to operate a virtual team. And also from a leadership perspective, they also need to learn, right? Maybe within not just 24 hours, maybe within 3 or 4 days, they need to know how to be a virtual leader, right? How to lead in front of the camera, in front of this frame. So that's one trend I'm seeing, learning as a necessity. The other thing I'm seeing is the learning as a community building platform, and learning as a community building platform. So I received quite a number of calls during this COVID period, and then they say, hey, Dixon, we want to do something. We want to do something as a way to gel the employee together because people are working remote, working from home. Some of them, they are feeling a bit lonely. So how can we do some engagement workshop or some talks just to gel the community together, right? So that's the second trend I'm seeing. And the third trend I'm seeing is learning is not so much about the hard skills, right? It's not so much about the classroom thing, right? Like what Tassin just mentioned. It's not about the core skill. It's not about the classroom, but increasingly it's about ideas and inspiration. And so I actually got asked to do some talks about, hey, can you talk about some perspective as the client purposely wants something out of the industry. So for example, if you're in telecom, you don't want people to talk about telecom. You want to know what's going on outside. If you're in insurance, people want to know what's going on outside insurance. So increasingly they want to have some ideas and inspiration. So these are the three things I'm seeing. Number one, learning as a necessity in this virtual world. Number two, learning as a community building. And number three, learning about inspiration and ideas. So these are the three things.
Thanks, Dixon. Let's go to Subramanian and understand how this new COVID issues actually has impacted the service industry, and what are the key levers that they've used from people capability perspectives to really support their team, which are spread across all India. Subramanian?
Yeah. So thanks, Ranjit. Good afternoon to all once again. This COVID situation was really challenging for us in the facility management industry, particularly in the Indian context. We needed to quickly adapt to technology, because in a facility management industry, you are expected to be there when there is a crisis, a physical presence of the manager there at the client place. They are used to working in that physical way, and they need to quickly adapt to leading from their location virtually over the various technology that is available, which we had to quickly adapt. Which was we had to immediately touch base with all the regional heads, get them to understand and adapt quickly, which we were able to do. This was the first learning we had, and the second one is getting people to manage situations, because we were running certain essential situations, essentials of the client, where we had to get the team in. In some sites, I had to get the team to stay in their work location continuously, even for days together. In some cases, it was close to 30-40 days, because they couldn't come out. And the great challenge was to arrange their basic needs in coordination with clients. So, my team virtually improvised. There were a lot of my managers who, managed to get e-passes, and they had to physically, go get things done. That was a great learning for us. And of course, the client was always ready to, reduce cost. Manpower rationalization was happening across sites. We had to manage that one side and keep the workforce motivated. We started doing a lot of virtual training. I have a dedicated training wing, the training manager, and people quickly adapted, and we quickly formed a CCMP team, a crisis COVID-19 crisis management team, a centralized team based out of a corporate office. We had a cross-functional team, and their primary duty was to check with, they were allotted a certain cluster of sites, client locations, where on a daily basis, they will be calling up people to find out, because I have a mix of both white-collared and blue-collared people, employees. So it was really a challenge to keep them motivated, and we were doing a lot of programs on stress management and, how to, take care of yourself, how to improve your immunity. We, in fact, took the help of some of the medical doctors who could give us a virtual lecture on how to, manage, how to ensure that you don't contract this virus. So it was really a wonderful learning. It was totally, the way we adapted to technology fast was really amazing. So it was a question of survival. So we had to adapt to the technology and quickly learn. And these days, even the lowermost employee, everybody has an Android phone, and which was really a great advantage. We could connect with people and we could, keep them motivated during this highly stressful time. That's it from me, Ranjit. Over to you.
Sure, sir. In fact, we'll come back to you for the technology piece that you employed for reaching out to all the pieces just a little bit later. We'll go over to Ravi now. Ravi has been managing a lot of classroom sessions for his Global Learning Center. So, Ravi, how has this impact that everybody had to stay home and still you have to ensure that the learning happens to each of the leaders and the employees that you had to push in? So, you have shared a slide. I'm just putting it across, and in the meanwhile, you can just start with your views on that.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah,
yes,
all right. So I think it has been a journey. If you recall, when we started the lockdown period, one of the first aim was to engage people, right? And a lot of us organized a lot of employee engagement activities. I'll talk about the slide in a moment, but if you remember, we organized a lot of engagement activities. We have spent almost 3-4 months in the lockdown, and we all are realizing that we're doing too much of it, and slowly, these engagement activities are coming down, and now people are talking about how do you give more free time to people, right? So that you don't organize meeting in lunch hours, evening hours. People are spending too much time on the phone, on the laptops, and now suddenly we are talking about how do you give them very different, or rather more time for self. Now, keeping this in mind, if you look at the slide right now, before COVID, what engaged the employees, right? And look at what were the people responses when we asked people that what would engage them at work. And after COVID, what would engage them at work? And there is a very clear distinction between what would engage them before and what would engage them after. And I think this realization is coming to reality and existence much more faster than we could think about. Something more that we should keep in mind is that some of the realities after COVID, so a lot of offices have opened up, some will open up in the future. Something that will not go away is social distancing. So when you go back to office, you will see social distancing. You will still see sanitization. You will see temperature checks, no physical touch, face masks, and virtual teams. Now, these are realities of the future. Now, when we talk about changing employee priorities, when you talk about changing workflows, workplace practices, what it calls for is a very, very different leadership to be able to manage all of this. And therefore, learning is playing a big role in this process. We have evolved over a period of time, and like all my panel colleagues said right now, we also have gone through this journey of virtualizing a lot of programs, offering a lot of virtual programs, offering simulations, gamifications, engagement sessions. I mean, we have done everything that you can think about for white collars, for blue collars. But what we are more and more realizing is that we need to have a more scientific approach to this. And on my next slide, I'll talk to you about what can be thought about when you really want to put some scientific thought process behind this. So if you talk about giving a new paradigm shift to how employees learn at work, or how you want to look at a people development agenda, there are 6 things that I personally can think about. One is we need to adapt digital. Adapt digital, when I say look at virtual instructor-led sessions, self-paced learning. Now, e-learning is misunderstood many times that it is only you go on the internet and do an e-learning. Now, e-learning can also be reading an article. It can also be playing a simulation game, etc. Right? So adapting digital is important and having that mindset. Second is off-the-shelf content. I think the world is, or rather the learning teams the role is changing largely. We were first providers of classroom training. So we were organizing classroom trainings, administrators basically. We moved to become partners. Then we said we'll become consultants. Then we said we'll become futurist consultant, where we'll go back and consult with the customers and give them offers of what we could do to help them meet the future requirements. But now our role is also getting largely translated to curators of content, and more than that, even aggregator of content, right? So how do you aggregate the content which is available across the organization, because there is so much of content available within the company itself. So how do you bring that to life? So that's very important. So look at external and internal off-the-shelf content, very, very important. How employees can curate the content or develop the content internally. Employee dialogues, again, very important topic, that how leaders can engage with employees on developmental topics. This is extremely important. And use some of the positive psychology tools. For example, you have Strengths Finder to have these kind of dialogues. So you empower the leaders with some of the tools that they can use for these conversations. Leaders as role model, again, I think what is important here is we should have a top-down approach. How we can really energize, how can we activate our top leaders to speak this language. And one of the things that we did in Siemens recently is the Leadership Learning Week, where we engaged with top 500 leaders across 3 days, and we did a complete virtual event, and we brought digital learning to life. The next topic, is, in my view, is embracing technology. And when we talk about it, look at the new methods of learning. For example, AI, robotics. So when I talk about AI, for example, when an employee is logging onto a learning platform, does he need to go to 10 different platforms to search 10 different topics? Or the platform is intuitive enough? For example, at Netflix, when you go to Netflix, you get a content that you want to watch. So is your learning platform offering you a Netflix kind of learning where it is personalizing the learning for you, right? That's very important. And that's what the LXP plays there. Do you have learning bots that enables learning? For example, an employee can speak to a bot and learn something, and that's the future of learning. Focusing on application is another. So when I say application here, I mean how employee, after gaining this knowledge, can go back and apply this learning at work. I think this is also something very important. And as leaders, I think we need to go back and try and see that while we offer digital learning to our employees, are we creating enough forums where we discuss about how employees are applying this learning at workplace? So in my view, these are 6 critical factors that would possibly define how the future of learning would look like. And that's what we guys are working on. I'm not going too much into depth, Ranjit, and I think across the next few minutes, we'll go deeper in many of such topics, but I'm just touching at a high level.
Sure. Thanks, Ravi. In fact, that brings us to the next topic that we wanted to cover is when our employees are working from home, right? What is it that we are actually extending? And technology is a backbone. In fact, there was a meme going around in April, right? That the technology transformation that has happened across organizations, right? And the pace with which has happened, even the CTO or a CEO couldn't have driven themselves, right? So it's a necessity is the mother of invention. In fact, that's what it flows in. So let's go back to Subramanian. In fact, you talked about using the Android phones to reaching out to the last mile, right? So if you can just elaborate on how did you go about doing it? Did you use any new technology platforms or new tools so that you can actually ensure that all the knowledge that could be available in the classrooms or anywhere else is available on the mobiles or laptops or iPads, tablets that is there?
Yeah. As the earlier speaker said, we had to quickly adapt to technology. We were using, the Zoom app and the Skype, whichever is available, whichever the employees were comfortable with. And whenever we have a specific training session, we end the session with asking the participants what other training needs they have, any other specific learning. The days are gone when the learning, the training assessment is done by the reporting authority, based on which the whole training is done. Now it is like learning on demand, what the individual wants. So this was really an eye opener for us, for my learning and development team. When we started doing this way, I said, why not we ask the participants what is it they want? like if I do a stress management program, what way it was helpful to them? Do they want anything more regarding stress management or any specific topic where they would like to learn? This is what really helped us to identify, the different requirements of people in terms of updating themselves. Some of them weren't aware of how to, manage the current COVID situation. What are the governmental guidelines? How to manage stress? There was pay cuts across companies. So how are they going to manage that? They were all stressed out. The main focus was that. So we had to do some good engagement activities, and instead of we proposing something, we started doing it this way. We started interacting with the various site teams, with the site managers present. We had an interactive session wherein we could identify certain specific common needs. So that became the topic on which my learning team started addressing. And some of the topics we found that was common across sites, across India, across languages. In some cases, we even took the local, when we addressed blue-collar people, we took a local guy's support so that he can translate into the mother tongue. Say, I do a program in Pune in a particular site where I have a mix of both the blue-collar as well as the white-collar. So what we did was we started asking for a translation in their own mother tongue so that they would be able to relate well. And of course, technology, as I said, we were using Zoom, Skype, and Teams, which was very useful. And the way even the blue-collar people adapted to technology is phenomenal. That's one of the great things that has happened because of this situation.
Yeah. Thanks, Subramanian. In fact, that adoption has been something that we've seen is actually gone pretty fast now. So let's look at Dasin. Dasin, how did you see that the technology adoption was reflective in the employees out there? Or any new platforms did you try in the last 4 months so that you can actually percolate the, all the possible learning methodologies to your people?
We soon realized that the next future of learning would be virtual. And earlier when we used to talk about technology, one of the feedback that we used to receive from our customers, our employees, was that we are not a technology organization. So if you give an example of, let's say, a Samsung, a Nokia, or an Apple, people would say that these are good organizations to look at, but these things don't apply to us. They are a much more cutting edge. They're using cutting edge technology, and we are an organization that has probably technology developed about 50 years back. And it is an organization that will, once the infrastructure is put in place, it will stay that way for the next 50 years. So we don't need to look at technology in that manner. However, the entire crisis has actually helped us look at our situation in a very different manner. We have developed simulation centers because training cannot happen. You can't really send people inside a tank, for example. So we have actually used cameras during the turnaround to actually put it inside the tanks, which are very, very high risk areas where you can't send human beings. So you have actually documented those things on videos and then presented it back to our employees, which has been exceptionally accepted by our employees, because now they have a different view of what goes on inside the particular thing. So looking at a theory and then looking at it in practice inside a particular multiple tanks is completely different, gives them a completely different view. So the future that I'm looking at is that we will be developing centers. We will be having a lot of simulation centers being developed. So we are working in association with our original equipment manufacturers, who are actually putting in the same technology that would be put on a console for an operator to actually put it inside a training center like us, where they can actually look at those things and operate those things in a more safer manner. They can make mistakes here. So they can actually look at how a pilot would learn to fly even without going inside the cockpit. It is the same thing that we're trying to kind of develop here. So you are not going and taking risk on actual machines, but you're taking risk on virtual centers that we've created now. So as in all of this has actually helped us, because the work had already started a couple of entire lever into a different level, and the customers, the business leaders, they are now more accepting of usage of technology inside workplaces. Just to give a small example, as in how we already had as an online platforms, e-learning provided to and offered to our employees. But what we also did was offer Wi-Fi inside the buses that our employees commute on. So we are an organization, we are a city in Saudi Arabia. So there are a lot of people who actually commute on a daily basis, about 1 hour, 1.5 hour in buses, company provided buses. We put Wi-Fi in those company provided buses. So now people have access to learning while they would have otherwise spent on either sleeping or watching videos on Netflix. Now they can actually look at things that the organization wants them to do, and they're doing it on their own time. So those kind of things have actually helped us take the entire conversation a little more further ahead.
Sure, that's interesting. In fact, so you don't give any reason for people not to learn, right?
Right.
Okay, Swati, you have an interesting mix of employees with you have manufacturing plants and you also have a lot of large field force. How did you use technology platforms to ensure that people keep learning irrespective of where they are?
Yeah. So, you rightly said it. It's a good mix. So those who are going to the sales for, the field and trying to sell, the entire mode of selling had changed because it had to now be digital. So we quickly had to get them to adapt to the new ways of doing it. And it did not take too long, but yes, it was working on both their willingness, that is a mindset, the learning mindset that I call, and of course the skill sets. So, what I'd like to tell you, what we have done here at Dr. Reddy's is we focused on a 3D approach, that is data, digital, and design. Data, because you need that for analyzing, synthesizing, and better decision making. And all digital. When I say digital, it is AI, it is machine learning, robotics, everything is about digital. And the design part of it, which is more about providing that user experience, whether it is patient-centric innovation or for stakeholders within of Dr. Reddy's and inside. So we in fact introduced a very interesting campaign also recently, and I'd like to share that, which is called Digital Ninjas. We're trying to encourage our people to upskill themselves and become digital ninjas by acquiring skill sets in these 3 areas: data, digital, design, which is more by creating a pull and saying go enroll for courses, and we are curating, we're providing all. So that has been very exciting for learners. Also wanted to share that when we are looking at learning in the new normal and for variety of workforce, 3 things that I would like to call out. One is I put it in the framework of a ABC. Whenever people learn, they should be in a position to apply and make their work faster, smarter, better in the current demands. So if we are able to show that, then it becomes very relevant for them. So whatever we have introduced by way of learning intervention or journeys, we have kept that application orientation very high. For example, we have something called breakthrough projects. So when our learners do these breakthrough projects, it's actually 2 degrees departure from their usual or the normal work. So they are trying to get exposed to new ways of doing things. That is the A part. The B is the balance. I think this is something which, us as L&D professionals, we have to do a good job. We have to ensure that the learning is seamlessly balanced in the flow and in the go. So when, I was hearing Tessin also talk about it, when people are on the go, can they grab a learning nugget without really getting disturbed? Or when they are in the flow of work, can they sort of, pick it up and go and move ahead? So that is the balance. Also, what we are offering to them by way of learning in terms of the inputs, it has to have the right doses. It has to have an element of fun. It has to have an element of knowledge, a skill, something which the concoction that we create, that has to be truly creative, enriching, and looking forward to for the learners. That is why the balance. And the C part of it, I think, is something which is very innate to the human part of talent, which I say is curiosity. we have to make, and it flows from, if you have the A and the B and the C obviously becomes easy. You have to make them very curious. There has to be a little intellectual restlessness in wanting to explore, learn. So we have to create that enabling culture also, which is there for people to want to do things differently, which we talk about a growth mindset. So look at possibilities. And okay, like for example, you said our sales force, they were doing things in a conventional way. And now the mental model had to be broken and said that no, today the way is different. Just stick to it. So you have to, swim there. So looking at possibilities, being resilient at the time of difficult times, having the spirit, and all that will come when you have the childlike spark and curiosity to say today is yet another day, and how do we move along and make the most of it? And look at life and learning as a journey. So that's the ABC for me.
Very interesting, actually. I think that ABC would be easy for people to remember, follow, and you also can create a rigor around it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Dixon, coming back to you, what are the new technology platforms or backbones that you've seen that have been emerging in last about 4-5 months across the world? What do you see is the latest? Now, of course, we've heard of Zoom, we've heard of the other virtual learning apps, but anything that you come across which is very innovative, which we can actually aim for?
Oh, okay. Couple things. First is about the collaborative platform, right? Something like Muro. That means you can do some joint brainstorming together, right? So I'm seeing some trends here. And number one is in terms of like collaboration tools, it will be on the rise. So that's number one. Number two, definitely is productivity. It could be personal productivity or like group productivity. So increasingly, people are working from home, so they need to manage multiple calendar. Right? Maybe half is like work calendar, half is your kids, your school activity, and so on and so forth. So so productivity is also very important. Right? So these are the two things I'm seeing, collaboration as well as productivity. Now, having said that, right? Having said that, I also see, right, there's a third category. Right? The third category, which is up and coming, is what we call the digital detox. Digital detox. That means we spend too much time on Zoom, on like social media. So nowadays we just want to spend some time, right, to stay away, right, to stay disconnect. Right? So I believe there will be increasing demand for that, right? So these are a couple areas that like that are actually shaping our future in that sense. Back to you.
Sure, thanks. In fact, there is an audience question I think we can pick up, which is quite relevant to this. I think Sudipto has asked a question. What are some of the opportunities of using AI and machine learning in L&D? All right, anyone wants to take it up? I think Swati, you talked about it some time back.
Yeah. So huge opportunities actually, because when you're talking about this personalization of learning, it's a lot about ensuring what is it that the learner wants to learn. Is it aligned with the aspirations of the learner and the interest of the learner? So when we talk about a curation, it's an iterative process. You have things that you've curated and also see whether it's sort of aligned there. And it's also about increasing the pie of learning. So when I say increasing the pie of learning, can you gamify it, have leaderboards, so that, the curiosity which I spoke about. So we have hugely used that, the AI enabled. So we do have, and we also have a learning, we have a design studio. So what we do is we also try to ensure that the experiences of learning that we are providing are very personalized, and the learner is there in it, not just at the start. And normally what happens is whenever any L&D intervention is introduced, there is an initial burst of energy, but after that there is a fizzling. So you have to ensure that the learning momentum stays. As I mentioned to you that we witnessed a huge appetite for learning when people signed up for courses, etc. during these times. But we realized that in order to take it forward all through, and even after, when the new normal comes in and ahead of it, it has to be AI enabled. It can't be. And managing of learning, from managing of learning, management to learning experience. So the experience has to be dialed up, and that's what AI does. That's the power of AI.
Sure, thanks, Swati. Anyone else like to add to this?
I'd like to kind of add. So there is a technology that we're still working on. So it's not something that we have yet launched to our employees, but hopefully in about a month and a half time, we'll be launching it to our employees. But it's a very interesting thing that we are developing in-house ourselves using our IT team. We've hired somebody from India to come in to Saudi Arabia to actually develop this with us. Uh, the idea is that, you know, a lot of learning that used to happen earlier used to happen in spray and pray mode. So we used to spray training to all our employees and all our audience and hope that somebody will actually use that training. And there is a lot of wastage that is associated with doing something like that. So what we did was we actually used our competency model, and we developed an in-house online competency evaluation. So now our employees are actually encouraged to go and do their assessment on their competency. So their profile gets created online inside the tool, and automatically using the power of artificial intelligence, associated programs are given to them to fill in those gaps on those competencies. Now it is very targeted. So if I, let's say, have a problem on a particular competency, I get shown programs which I need to still discuss with my immediate supervisor and get him to approve those programs for me. But now the conversation goes into a different level. Now I'm looking at my competency, I'm looking at my competency gaps, and then I'm looking at programs that are offered to fill in those competency gaps. So that's something that we're still working on, and hopefully in about a month and a half, we will be launching it to our employees. Something that we've internally developed, and I just wanted to kind of share something that we're working on that.
Ranjit, if I may add to this,
Yeah, please, Ravi.
Ravi here. So I think the question on AI and machine learning can be answered with the newest technology which is in the market, which is the learning experience platform, the LXPs that we talk about. Many companies are moving from the conventional LMS to LXP. And I think once you understand the architecture behind LXP, then you'll understand that how an LXP uses the concepts of AI and machine learning at the back end to really personalize the learning for the employees. So it's like a cloud-based system which is sitting on top of your 10, 15, 20 LMSs that you have in the company. Either it can be a LMS or a knowledge management platform, or it could be a platform where your employees are actually developing content and pushing the content on the platform. So LXP, in my view, is a beautiful example of how AI and machine learning can be used. So it can be used to personalize learning for you. As Tahseen said, it can allow you to create individual profiles. It can allow you to map the skills, recommend learning, do assessments, give you rewards, create leaderboards. All of that is possible. At the same time, I think there are a lot of companies in the market which are coming up with really path-breaking innovation around learning. Imagine when our pilot is learning, he's learning on a simulator to learn to fly an aeroplane. Similarly, you are talking to an AI bot to understand how to talk to a customer on a laptop, because you cannot see to the customer, right? So how should be your language? What kind of what's the intonation that you're bringing in your language? How many pauses you're taking? And there is an AI bot which is talking to you, which is recording your facial expressions, which is telling you how much is your energy. And this is what the technology can bring to you. And this is not future. This is now. This is available now in the market. People are using it, right? And that's what we are trying to bring to our employees as well.
We have a full-fledged.
I think that's interesting. Thanks, Swati, Ravi, for sharing. There's another question. I think there are two questions. I think I'll just combine both the questions, and I think this is pertinent to all of us. Typically, whenever there are businesses under pressure, you have cost cutting happening, and one of the first costs that is always looked at is L&D. Right? The reason is because maybe somewhere organization doesn't see immediate impact out of it. So with the virtual learnings coming in, right? How are you justifying the cost that you incur or the L&D cost center that is there to your stakeholders so that your cost budgets remain the same or grow in the future? Any particular efforts that you've taken to justify the value out of remote learnings to your stakeholders? Anyone would like to take it?
Ranjit, again, I think the cost here is a challenge for all of us in L&D. And like for us, I'm sure for many companies, this year would be a complete washout for L&D folks. Some companies are trying virtual, but the demand is not there because you see associated cost to it. The only thing that's running at the moment is your online content that you have available with you. And that's why in my slide I mentioned off-the-shelf content and internally curated or curated content. So what is important is that how do you enable internal center of excellences where you can allow to generate a lot of content. So as L&D teams, I think we need to realize that we'll have to cut down costs, no doubt about it. Companies are thinking about, should we invest in learning or should we save employees' salaries and their jobs? And definitely the latter is the priority, right? So I think as L&D professionals, our job is to look at still provide the same value, but through internal resources as much as possible till the time companies can invest. But at the same time, companies are, I think what is still happening is investment in the critical roles, in the critical competencies. I think that will not stop, whether it is virtual, whether it's pandemic or whatever. So as L&D professionals, if you can work with business to identify what are those critical competencies and who are those people in the critical job roles, those that need those kind of learnings, then that will still happen. Investments will still happen.
Sure, thanks. It's bringing value to the table. Yeah. Swati, you're saying something.
I just like to add on. Fortunately for me, I mean, learning and development and capability here is seen as a business agenda. It's not an like, can be sort of compromised or optimized in that sense. So that's why the entire spirit and the view towards learning is very different. And why it's called a business agenda is for a purpose, is because it's seen as a value lever. And the things dialed up, I'd like to share a few things. One is you try to maximize your own internal trainers, because when you have people who are working, they are the best people to talk about what the skills are and also transmit it. So we always had interventions around passion for teaching, etc., which we're now sort of increasing. That is one. Second thing is we are setting up a digital studio. The reason for the digital studio is that we can curate our own content and make it available. So that's another way of looking at what you can do creatively in-house, what is possible. And third is this learning stories, which is a lot about sharing the kind of learning. So when you give people a chance to share, co-create, a lot of that, there is joy in it, there is relevance in it, and then also you're keeping the costs at bay. I would also like to say that whenever we are making investments in people, such as the training days are gone. It's a day about learning. So therefore, it's no longer an episode that you had a tick in the box, an activity or an event that happened. It's a journey. So when you are looking at journey, please let's open our minds to look at multiple modalities of learning. Learning can happen in experiential way. Learning can happen in bite size. Learning can happen through sharing. Learning can happen through so many collaboration you talked about, idea generation. So look at learning in multiple ways. The moment we do that and that shift happens, we will see that it will be absolutely sailing through, and people will not view it as a cost which is now to be calculated. They will rather look at the benefits that they can envisage from it.
Sure. Thanks, Swati. Tasim, Dixon, anything you'd like to add on that?
I think Ravi and Swati had covered the entire question very well. But I'd like to kind of take in from what Swati mentioned earlier to one of the questions. I think it's not just giving an event of learning, it's event of training. So it's not an episode of training. It's a journey that needs to be created. And when you create that kind of a journey, you need to be involving a lot many more people than just the learning team. One of the challenges that I see with us as human resources, as learning professionals, is that we'd like to kind of become a know-it-all person and wanted to kind of lead the entire effort from our side. But it's a joint effort. It's something that needs to be happening in collaboration. We need to, as learning professionals, our job should become the enabler of learning, not the provider of learning. We should become an enabler of learning so that we can enable learning happening at or different parts and different corners of the organization by different leaders. Leaders should be teaching their staff. We should be enabling leaders to actually take up learning and become engaged and infused with energy to take learning from their end and pass it on to the next generation.
Yes, totally, totally agree, Tassin. I was talking to CHRO a couple months back, and his point to me is he wished the L&D team to get out and meet more people, right, from other departments within the company or even outside of the company. So that is that's a very fascinating point, right? Tassin, you talk about is like as a learning team, okay, you need to definitely go out, right? Listen more, understand more, be curious, right? Like Savatthi mentioned, right? The curiosity, right, must be there. Right? So,
sure. Right. Thanks. In fact, so I think just before we close, we got a couple of minutes more. Now, it's a journey that we had. Some of you tried to share what is it that we've been doing. Some of you also shared what is it on the plate that can come in. Quick 2 minutes, 1 or 2 minutes each in terms of what's your plan over next about 6 months to 1 year to help your organization be role ready so that they can thrive even in this pandemic. A couple of key takeaways that you are looking at so that it actually enables your organization.
Ranjit, can I?
Yeah, please.
As the other speaker said, the budget is out of the window now for the current year for learning. So what we are now proposing is why not I leverage the talent that is available within my organization. Say from my HR team, I will develop a module for compliances. In facility management, we specifically wanted to target the facility management industry. So why not we develop modules which can be marketed outside, and so that I earn money by doing that, which will help me to meet my learning budget. So that way we have started doing the initial discussion along with the cross-functional team. We have formed a cross-functional team with my safety head, my procurement head, my integrated management systems head. So we are thinking of developing modules and marketing it in the industry. Since we are in the facility management industry, we thought if we could earn some money, we could justify the expenditure. So that's one of the things we have started doing. We have started working on it, and we hope to be successful in that, so that we can manage the cost.
So you want to convert L&D from a cost center to a revenue center, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Others, Ravi, Tassin, Swati, anyone wants to take it? 6 months to 1 year.
I think we need to, Swati, you want to take that ahead?
Please go ahead, please.
Right. So I think as in we need to create dynamic workplaces, as in our job is completely changing, evolving, and our business leaders, our customers are in as much of shock as we are. So we need to be together in the entire thing. What we should be doing is focus on adoption of technology, of course, but also focus on creating expertise within the organization. For example, at Petrorabik, we invested right in the middle of the entire crisis. We invested in 5 of our employees to actually go ahead and take certification from the British Psychological Society, so that instead of outsourcing our development center, assessment centers, we can manage those things ourselves. So it's those kind of investment that we should be focusing on. And what we should be focusing on and helping our leaders do is to actually prepare our organizations for the next phase of growth, because what I believe is that I'm extremely optimistic when it comes to as in these situations, because what I see is 2020 may have gone, we may have lost the entire year. We can't get the refund for 2020, but 2021, 2022, when the entire crisis gets over, you will see a different phase of growth for most organizations. So there will be a lot of opportunities that will be coming into in the future in the market, and there will be a lot of growth that we'll be seeing. And only organizations that are preparing themselves now will actually survive that growth. So if you want to take advantage of that growth, we need to help our organizations prepare for that growth, to handle that kind of growth in the organization. So as in help the organization adopt the technology, prepare and gain expertise that is required to be gained, see what are the things that can, instead of outsourcing those things, can it happen inside? So look at those kind of things. And of course, prepare your organization for the next phase of growth.
Thanks, Tasin. Ravi, you want to add to that?
So for us in Siemens, many of you must have already heard that our the new CEO who will take over from the existing CEO globally has already announced that Siemens will go in the direction of mobile working. And what it means is definitely allowing the employees to work remotely more and more. And what it means definitely is, as Tasin said, that we need to relook at a lot of things, including learning. And one of the things that we will definitely be, in fact, we're already working on is redefining future of learning. And when you do that, you need to relook at all the learning offers that you have available with you today, which were largely focused on classroom-based learning, be it a one-time intervention or a long-term intervention. How do you transform that to fit the future of workplace and the future of Siemens as well? So this is one of the things that we'll be working on. Second is, what are the technology platforms that we will be needing? So how do you bring those technology platforms on the table, be it a collaborative platform or be it, for example, in a classroom setup, you do breakout zones and you have those flipboards. So do you have a digital flipboard that you can provide to people, which can be used virtually? So what do we have the right technology platforms for conducting the workshops and collaborating in the workshops? Then the third element is, how do you empower the managers and give them good information about what's available for them? And last, but I think one of the most important element here, which I think we all have to work on, is creating a mindset for learning in a digital world. I think that's the biggest challenge that we all will face. We already have started seeing some examples where in China, where the situation is becoming a lot more better, we already see the demand of classroom again coming back. And we definitely don't want to go in that direction. We are saying that if you're moving in a digital direction, and especially mobile working, then digital has to be the future. So I think working on mindset is extremely crucial. And I think this is a long way to go for all of us, and we are working in that direction.
Sorry, can I just interrupt with all respect? We are running out of time, Ranjit, if you don't mind.
Just take 1 minute to close now.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's it. So I think we in fact, we just took in some additional questions from the audience. I think that's why we thought we'll actually involve them also. So I think just to come to a close, I think last few months have been challenging, very challenging from everyone's perspective. But I think if you look at, there was another meme that was happening in the last 100 years. What has humanity gone through, right? From the Spanish flu to the world wars that has happened. So I'm sure we'll also we'll bounce back, we'll be smarter, we'll be stronger, we'll be more innovative. And I think in that process, onus of making our teams innovative is with HR L&D fraternity. I think we have to play a pivotal role in getting this change for the organization, right? I think that's what we are here. Thanks a lot, Dixon, Swati, Tasi, Ravi, and Subramanian. I think taking your time and sharing your experience, expertise with all of us. In fact, just a quick one shout in audience, in case you want to reach out to any of the experts, reach out to their LinkedIn, reach out to the website pages. I think that's you can reach out for more guidance from them. Let's see you on the other side of the pandemic. Till the time, stay safe and stay healthy, guys.
Thank you so much. I must say my few words, if you don't mind. I must thank Mr. Compy. Fantastic job done as a moderator. Thank you very much for doing this. Thank you, Dixon. Thank you, Dr. Swati. You're in healthcare. Special shout out to you. You guys are doing a great job at a time when all of us need it. And thank you so much. Tahseen, thank you very much for being part of our panel. I'm sure I'm living very close to where you are, so I look forward to connecting with you in the future, inshallah. And thank you, Ravi, very much for all the help. And thanks to PM who had to run away because a bit of an urgent issue that he had come up. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.